never meaning no harm. Beats all you never saw.
Welcome to Comic Books and You. We're continuing Jon Dexter week with his other comic, Dime Store Detective, which is a supernatural thriller with a bit of a twist. It takes place in two different time frames at the same time. Kind of an interesting play on the story, and it works better than I expected originally. And I actually really like where this story is and where this theory is going. Hopefully, the current Kickstarter, which is Dime Store Detective number 3, goes through okay, and Jon can get moving on producing issue 4 when he's got the time. So let's get into it. Our main character in this is a Detective Donald McKinder. From my quick math, he's be around 49 years old, maybe 50. So a middle-aged man on the older side, let's say. He's got brown, grayish hair on the side mainly. He's a disgraced detective due to the fact that something you learn in issue 2, and also probably because he's the son of a local disgraced moonshiner, which might seem like a weird turn of event from someone who was the son of a criminal to become a detective, but it's not unheard of, especially not in detective stories. And he was taught from a young age to take responsibility for his action and many very positive things by his father, which is probably why he went the path of being a detective. His father is Robert McKinder, and his uncle Richard McKinder, Bobby and Ricky, were the two big league bootleggers, moonshiners in the 1980s, in 1981, 80s and 81 probably. They were feared throughout the county until another crew moved in and started causing some issue. Bobby is the more stable and more reliable of the two, probably would be seen as the head of the gang, while Ricky is a bit of a wilder and a bit more active, let's say. Maybe not the most stable individual, but that might come with the territory as a moonshiner. And apparently, from what we learned at least in book 1, they might have been getting into a bit of murdering later on in life, and that caused their downfall. Our story begins as Detective McKinder walks into a crime scene, a bit uninvited and unwanted, where a young woman is hanging naked from a tree with a bottle stuck in her mouth. Kind of a weird murder scene overall, in my opinion. Apparently, joggers found the victim, and she died the night before, but she's still untouched by wildlife in hot Georgia summer, which is very weird overall. And we get some standard police drama talk, police procedural talk between McKinder and the woman detective. So at this point in time, it still looks like a pretty straightforward police procedural. The detective in charge of the investigation shows up with the medical examiner and starts giving McKinder a bit of shit because, he's not supposed to be there, and according to him, he's the number one suspect because the location where they are right now is where the McKinders in the past dumped a bunch of bodies. So, not the best look for Detective McKinder there. As McKinder takes a look at the bottle recovered from the body, he has a flashback to his youth, as the bottle is one that was used by his father and uncle and the rest of his family to make moonshine. So this sends him back to a day where his uncle and his father took him for a ride in his father's Barracuda to do a delivery of moonshine. So Ricky has the Elvis air and seems a bit vain from the start, while Bobby tries to already inculc some good information and good manners to his son while they're getting ready to get in the Barracuda. They do a delivery where the guy promises that he's going to pay the day after. Another learning lesson for young Donald. And they are chased by a cop to the county lines and they escape. But unfortunately, they end up hitting a local farmer's dog. Donald's father basically decides to end the suffering of the animal using his pistol and then to bring it back to the owner so they don't have to look for it and basically do the right thing. Doing that, of course, will probably put him in jail for a short period of time, or at least a period of time, because he evaded the police, but he still does it because it's the right thing to do. We flash back to the present, and Mackinder explains to his partner the details of basically how it was back in the day, and that there was a bootlegger war back in 1981. We go back once again to the past. Now, that's 6 months later, as Bobby was in jail for a 6-month stint. Unfortunately, during that time, another gang moved into the territory and is muscling their way in. The Mackinders didn't really care if anybody else was moonshining or selling moonshine. There was plenty of customers to go around, is what they say. But the new gang, the Lionel's gang, they're a bit more proactive on taking care of the competition, let's say. One of the moonshiners from Lionel's gang insults the Mackinder brother, and Ricky decides to beat him up pretty badly. He's stopped by Bobby because he doesn't want things to go too far, and that the Lionel's gang has ties with the Dixie Mafia. So we can tell that there's already an escalation in the conflict between the two groups at that point, and we can already tell that Ricky might not be the nicest person around. We go back to the present in the evening as Donald is listening to a record and playing on his piano, thinking about the case and the ramifications of it, and saying that he's going to catch whoever is doing the murders, as there was now 3 murders in 3 weeks, all of them kind of pushing towards this same MO and same information here, trying to get his attention for some reason. And this is where things take a pretty wild turn here, as a young man is threatening a priest with a gun, asking for Detective Mackinder to come and talk to him, while an older priest is trying to do a makeshift exorcism. So at this point, we get a little bit more of that supernatural element, and it's introduced really low-key here, more or less, and it's pretty well done. So overall, we get a very nice introduction to the character of Donald Mackinder, and that's all we really need in this particular book. It's a police procedural, but not a standard one or a common one. It goes into that crime thriller genre and supernatural thriller genre, and all of those things mesh really well, especially with the flashbacks we get that are very evocative as well. So this is a story that is very solid from the get-go. Now let's take a look at the cover. The cover for this particular book is a little bit different than what I would be expecting for a crime drama or a police procedural, but it would work fairly well in many other styles, like vampire hunting, as we see the big monster with the fangs at the top, brawls in the city. It works really well to attract the attention. It's got very good color composition. And like I said, it could fit multiple genre if you look at it, which is actually pretty good. If you're put that up on a rack somewhere, people might buy it just because they're like, well, what is it exactly? Which might be a very good idea. Like I said, it's fairly eye-catching. It's not super descriptive as to what is going on, especially when we compare it to issue 2 cover, which is one that I really find fantastic. The Dime Store Detective branding is pretty simple overall, but it's effective. I mean, it looks like it should. It's readable. That's the important bit. And I don't think it needs to be any fancier in the long run. Got a digital copy of this to run the review, and I've backed the Kickstarter for issue 3, which comes with issue 1 and issue 2 digital. Works perfectly fine. We have a nice thank you page for higher tier backers of the original. I would probably like to put a thank you for supporting page like we have in many other comics and in mangas very often. Just a thank you for buying my book, kind of little description and maybe an idea of like, why am I writing this story? Something like this. Simple little things like these do go a very long way in terms of having people feel like they are a part of the whole experience and that they can enjoy your book and why they should enjoy your book. You also get an ad for Comics Wellspring, a division of Greco Printing. Perfectly okay with this type of ad. I mean, in the end, it can help other people who don't know who they can go to for printing of their books. And it's a very simple little thing here that can be included if you get a 5-cent discount off your book, or, I don't know exactly what kind of deal you can get off of this. I mean, it's perfectly fine. That's something that some indies might want to consider at some point in the future to see if there's any people who would be willing to run ads in their products. It's not a bad idea. The big mainstream people do it. I know there's a bit of difference when we're messing with the shipping if there's too many ads in your product. So there are things that you need to look into on that end as well. So try to make a balance out of the two. When we start looking at the book, the first 2 real pages of the comic, the first one being just a letter from father to son, which actually gives a nice little bit of exposition and a setup for the story. But here, the first 2 real pages of the book are really, really nice. I really like the split in difference here between the 1980s and the present, giving us that things have changed, but not as much as one would expect. And things are, unfortunately, too similar between the two time periods. Probably have a corrupt mayor in both of them. You've got crime in both of them. And you've got people just enjoying life just in both of them as well. So that's a really nice setup right there. We are still playing with American realistic style comics. Kind of works well here in a police drama / supernatural thriller. Supplements the story fairly well. It's nothing that is unexpected or out of the ordinary. There's a few odd facial expressions, like on this one ear, but nothing that will take you out completely from the story. The proportions on the characters are really good. It's overall a very decent work here from the artist. Personally, I would have used a completely different style of art between the 2 time periods, not just the transition from black and white to color with the modern. I mean, it works very well here with the black and white, but I don't know. There's a few things that I would have done a little bit differently here. Maybe gone with a very cartoony look for the 1980s to represent that Donald was a child back then, and that would be something that a child would see, something along those lines. Same thing, rather than going with black and white, I probably would have gone with just a sepia tone all over on this. No actual color, but yellow and black, let's say. Probably would have been a little bit more expensive, but it would have been fairly cool in my opinion. Might be something that I play with at some point using some photo edition tool. Just for fun. Mechanical design are generally really good in this one. The Barracuda is showed from multiple angles, and it looks good in every angle it's shown in. We've got police car from past and present, who also look pretty good overall. Always nice to see some attention to details when dealing with mechanical design. It's a thing that can be difficult for some artists because a lot of people, we practice a lot doing humans, sometimes animals, things like this. But vehicles, cars, airplanes, not something that a lot of people draw for fun unless you're in that particular wheelhouse. There's people that do it for fun, obviously. Same thing, we've got pretty good firearms throughout it. It's not the best I've seen, unfortunately, but firearms in here are good in general. So I'm not worried about seeing more in the future. The entire focus of this story is on Donald Mackinder. It's very nice to actually have a book focused on a single character in every single way. Yes, we have that flashback with his father and his uncle, but in this book, at least, everything that happens to his uncle and his father is viewed through the eyes of 9-10-year-old Donald Mackinder. Unlike many books that I've reviewed recently, I don't have to spend 5 minutes just explaining all the characters, or I go through the story and I have to go like, yeah, well, there's this character that was added here, and then there's this one that's fairly important, but not important enough to get its own slide. Here, Donald is the center of attention, and we realize that the story revolves around him. Very refreshing, like I said, compared to many books out there where we just get lost in the multitude of characters that are introduced. While he is raised by career criminals, Donald keeps getting good moral from his father from the start. Basic things like don't disrespect your elder, especially when they're in the police. A man's word is his life. When they complete a business transaction for Moonshine, and the guy says, well, I'm going to pay you tomorrow. Well, Donald, his father, just lets it go and say, like, yeah, he's going to pay because that's what a man does. And when he hits the dog, obviously, he does the right thing. So everything that we see, even though it's criminal behavior by the role models for Donald, the role model also tries to give him the best information possible to put him in the right direction. The whole moral lesson when the dog is extremely poignant. It's something that is a bit unexpected in that kind of book. It's a bit hard, I would say, but I mean, those are things that happened and keep happening, and they're always sad when they happen. Well, whether it's a dog, a child, or anything of the sort, it's important to respect life. On the other hand, we do see that Ricky McKinder was never a good and very moral character. He's extremely vain, always taking care of his hair and everything. He's the one that smokes between the two father figures. He's more violent. I mean, he's the one beating up Lionel's goon, but he's also the one when they do the business transaction for the Moonshine that says, like, yeah, if the other guy doesn't pay, I'm going to bust his ass. So there's gradation here with the character. Very nice to see that the two brothers are very different in how they behave, and that we see like what is good and what is bad and how that would affect a young Donald throughout this story. As we end the book with the exorcist bit, it really puts the supernatural element at the forefront. We didn't really have much supernatural in the first bit of the book. It was a police procedural. It had that old-timey feel in the 80s that you could remember from things like Dukes of Hazzard as an example. But when this happens, we go from, well, okay, it's a weird police story to, well, is something going on. And it's something that is outside of the control of the average human. This is the kind of thing that I really like, especially at the end of the book. Here, it really works and it enhances the quality of the book, which is a rare thing that I say for a lot of those miniseries. As far as the pacing goes on this, you really have two stories going on at the same time here, but the setup is done very well overall. It's important to have those expositionary flashbacks throughout the thing, and they work fairly well. I would have liked a little bit more current day detective story in this issue and maybe in the next as well. Probably stuff that you would get in issue 3, issue 4. As the story goes on, we'll get less flashback exposition and more real day action. But it's a very good setup for the background of the character and his moral elements. Flashbacks are wonderfully easy to follow here. It's just the time skip when Donald's fathers go to jail. I missed it. First time I was reading around, I kind of missed it as I was reading, as I was going fairly quickly, as I normally do when I read a book. I read it quickly first, then more in depth later. Once you take your time to read it, you easily catch what's going on, so it's not a very big issue. Unlike my review from the previous title by this author, this one is a thematic slam dunk. It works exactly as it's supposed to, and the supernatural elements are fairly well integrated here, and they're playing in the field that everybody is used to, police procedural, so that works fairly well. Detective McKinder is an interesting character with plenty of depth. Even in a single issue, you can easily connect with him in pretty much any way. I don't see any people having a hard time connecting with someone with this kind of background. Could we have done this story in the age of Moonshiner and Prohibition in the 30s? Probably. Would have been a very different story between the 1930s to the 1970s, obviously. And we'd have a bigger difference in style for the characters and a bigger difference in style from the existence of what happened between the 30s and the 70s. Might be something to explore at some point in the future, or something, if someone is doing a different book, it could be interesting. Who knows? This one is an easy recommend for me for the first 2 issues. Issue 3 is financing on Kickstarter right now with catch-up tiers. The digital tier is fairly reasonable. You get all 3 issues digitally, so a good deal overall. Hopefully, this story can move forward. I know it's hard to finance right now on Kickstarter. There's all sorts of things going on and all sorts of stories going around, let's say. But it's just difficult for everyone, from what I understand. So if you've got a few bucks laying around, not a bad thing to support a young or, well, a recent creator. I won't say young, but a recent creator that's trying his hand at something new. So I hope you guys have a very nice rest of your day. I thank you very much for listening to me today. Remember to ring the bell, click the like button, leave a comment. It's very appreciated when you do. Keep on reading comics, keep on enjoying them. I'll keep reviewing and analyzing them, and I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.